Hello, everyone. This is Alex, CTO from Finsweet, and today we are implementing a reverse proxy for Webflow projects. On the last reverse proxy meeting that we did, we were just playing around with them. We saw things that you can do, like the cool features that a reverse proxy provides you when you implement it. But today we're getting real. Today we're actually going to pick a bunch of Webflow projects and we're going to set it up with a domain like if it was a real project. So you can do the same with your own projects.
That's it, sweet.
Today, the main goal is that we're going to create the same exact setup, but not the same exact, I'll get to that in a second, but the same setup that we have in Finsweet.com, where we, under the same domain, which is Finsweet.com, we have multiple Webflow projects. And you can see it if you go to Finsweet.com. This is a Webflow project. You can navigate inside this Webflow project. But then if you go to, for example, Finsweet.com/cookie consent, this is a completely separate Webflow project. So this is not related at all with the Finsweet.com project. It's a Webflow project that has its own elements, its own collection lists, its own styles. It's completely separate. And same, for example, for Client First. We go here, Client First. So essentially, we have multiple Webflow projects and we connected them under a single domain. The only thing that today we're not going to do, well, there are a bunch of things that today we're not going to do, like, for example, server-side rendering content, playing around with cookies, trying to implement more specific use cases. Today, we're just focusing on this routing, serving different pages based on the URL. But inside this, what we're not going to do either, it's nested paths routing. And let me show you what I mean. So when you go to finsweet.com/attributes, this is another Webflow project. Okay, this is a completely separate project. But if you go to /attributes/combos, this is also another Webflow project. So as you can see, we're actually nesting multiple Webflow projects based on the route. Okay, this setup is a little bit more complex, and I don't think we'll have enough time today to do it. So we'll omit it, and then if everyone is interested in going even deeper, maybe in a third stream, we can just try to implement this version. Okay, so let's make a quick drawing of what's going to happen today. I have 3 different projects. Okay, one project I want it to be the main project, and then the other 2 projects I want them to be served based on some URL. I'm actually going to implement this with a domain. This is a random domain that we bought that we're not using at all. That it's called nodejs. Don't ask, because I have no idea why this name, but yeah, I'll use this domain for an actual real use case. Okay, so the main project, it's going to live under webcharts.com. Okay, so anything that is webcharts.com and then pages that live under webcharts.com, yeah, Martin, the cherries. So for example, about, if we created an about page, we'll do it later. This about page also, it's going to live under webcharts.com, under this project. But if, for example, we want to navigate to this sub project, let's call it sub1. Remember that this is up to you. You will see how you can name these sub projects yourself. Okay, but anything that lives under sub1, it's going to serve this project. Okay, this means that /sub1 is going to be the home page of this project, and /sub1/about, for example, this is going to be the about page of the subproject 1, which is this one. And the same for the subproject 2. So if we just take this and duplicate it, it's going to be the same exact thing like this. Maybe we can do something different, like contact, I don't know, for showing a different page. But essentially, we have 3 different projects where the main project lives under the base domain, and then the two sub-projects, each one lives under a specific path, okay? Now, the way that we are going to set it up in Webflow is we're actually going to have a reverse proxy, as obviously, and that reverse proxy is going to live under the domain. So this one, okay. And let me just tell you that this, you'll understand why in a second. But basically what we're saying here is we have the domain, and this domain could have some subdomain in the front. That's why I added this asterisk. And also this domain could have any path, any kind of route that goes under the domain, okay? Then, obviously, because the reverse proxy is going to live in the domain, we then need to be able to serve the content from different places, okay? And the easiest thing to do, the easiest way of doing this, it's basically hosting every project in its own subdomain, okay? But we're basically going to leave the main domain empty with no Webflow project. Well, actually, what's going to live in the domain is the Cloudflare worker that we're going to use for it. If you remember on the last stream, we were playing around with Cloudflare workers because we're implementing this reverse proxy with Cloudflare. The setup is going to be very similar with a non-Cloudflare worker setup, but some things might change. So if anybody wants to do it differently, maybe we can dive into that in another stream. But basically, every project of this is going to live under a subdomain. So what we're going to do is the main domain, we'll just put it in a subdomain that it's going to be called WF. This name, doesn't matter. It just, I chose it because whatever, but it could be main, it could be whatever name you want to add it, okay? Just keep in mind that whatever subdomain you add here, you will not be able to then create a sub-project that uses it. So for example, if I have here WF, then I will not be able to create a sub-project that uses /WF like this, okay? Just keep that in mind. I don't think that it's an actual use case, but yeah, it's something to know. And then every sub-project will have it in its own subdomain too. And what we will do is that we will match the subdomain. So what's in here, we will match it to the actual subfolder, the subrow that we want to have here. In this case, we decided to call it sub1. So I'll do the same here. We'll just call it sub1. Not sub1, but sub1, like this. Let me just remove this two-point confusions. And the same for the sub-project 2. We'll just take this and we'll call it sub-project 2. So essentially what's going to happen is the user is going to visit this, okay? And based on whatever the user visited, the reverse proxy is going to decide a bunch of things. The first thing is if the route it's matching any of these subroutes. So if, for example, the route starts with sub1, blah, 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 the reverse proxy is going to detect, hey, okay, this sub1 is actually a reverse proxy project because we will store that. We will know it. So then the reverse proxy will know, okay, this means that I have to go to this project and I have to fetch the contents from this project, which is living in sub1.webcharts.com. Well, I couldn't draw the arrow whereas like that. If the project starts with another thing that it's reverse proxy, like sub2, then the reverse proxy will know that he has to go to this project to fetch it from sub2.webcharts.com. If the route doesn't match any subdomain, like contact, like this, then the reverse proxy will know that, okay, there is no subpath here that matches a reverse proxy project. So this means that I have to go to the main project. okay? And it's going to fetch the /contact from the main project. We'll have this entire logic. But not only we're going to do this, we're actually going to go a step further. Let me show you. So right now, as you can see, we want every project to live in a subdomain. So basically in the project settings of the Webflow project, I don't know how many times it's a project, I'm sorry. But in the settings, we will have connected this domain, this subdomain in this case, to the actual project, okay? But this means then that users could potentially not visit this URL, but they could potentially go and visit this URL, right? Well, this is something that with Cloudflare workers, we can also handle. It cannot be handled everywhere. So if you have a setup that it's different than Cloudflare workers, you may not be able to handle this specific case where the user is visiting the subdomain. You'll know why in a second. But with Cloudflare workers, we will be able to do it. And actually, if we check, for example, finsweet.com/attributes, it's a Webflow project, as I told you. So this means that attributes.finsweet.com, it's where the Webflow project is connected to. So this subdomain, it was actually the DNS of this subdomain, it's what's pointing to Webflow. But if we visit this, you will see that I am being redirected to finsweet.com/attributes. So when we write any reverse proxy, let me do another one, client first, this one. If we go to client first.finsweet.com, I'm going to be redirected to finsweet.com/client first. If I go to client first, let me just see another page, docs intro. If I go to client first.finsweet.com/docs/intro, I'm going to be redirected to finsweet.com/client first/docs/intro. Okay. The reason is because the reverse proxy is going to be smart, and we'll write the logic together, so don't worry. But the reverse proxy is going to know that when a user is visiting this subdomain, he has to redirect the user to the correct route under the main domain. The reason why we can do this is, as I mentioned, because we're using Cloudflare workers. And one benefit, one big feature of Cloudflare workers is that it sits next to your DNS. And it allows you to run the logic of the Cloudflare worker before the DNS, before the entire connection it's finished. Meaning that when the user visits the subdomain, before handling anything else, before sending the user to Webflow, because remember that this subdomain is going to be connected to Webflow, before sending the user that request to Webflow, we will intercept that with the Cloudflare worker and be able to redirect the user to another place. In this case, it would be redirected to the main domain. Okay, this, as far as I know, this can only be done with Cloudflare workers because it has this benefit of being connected, of sitting right in front of the DNS. Now, the entire workflow I've drawn it first in here, and I will share this afterwards with you. Well, actually, we're going to go open source with a code base for our reverse proxy. So you don't need to worry because this diagram is included in the repository that we're going to open. It's not open yet, but it will be soon. But in here, essentially describes the entire workflow with a URL. Okay, I have in this case you can see that it uses finsweet.com. This is because I draw this diagram when I was building the reverse proxy for finsweet.com, but still it applies. In this case, today we're working with webcherries.com, but it's the same. But yeah, you can see that we have multiple test cases in this case. I will have multiple URLs, and we want to make sure that all those URLs are being handled corresponding. But essentially, let's just follow this flow super quick so everyone understands it, and then we'll move. So a request is going to be performed to finsweet.com, but it could be to any subdomain, and also it could be to any path, right? Because I could be requesting a subdomain, but the reverse proxy needs to first know exactly which subdomain it's because maybe some subdomains are a Webflow project, but some subdomains are a completely different thing, that it's not even a Webflow thing, okay? So first of all, we'll decide, is the host name, is this URL just the base domain? So it would be webcherries.com in this case, or is it like a subdomain.webcherries.com? We'll try to decide that. If it's not .webcherries.com, this means that we actually have a subdomain in place. Okay, so we'll go here, and now we have to decide. Okay, is this subdomain reverse proxied? Meaning that is it one of those Webflow projects that are connected to a subdomain, or is it a random subdomain that maybe we're using for an API? Maybe we're using it for a React application. We can be using it for thousands of things. If it's reverse proxied, let's start with a simple one. If it's not reverse proxied, we'll just check, first of all, if it's the main Webflow project, because it could be that it's not a path, it's the main Webflow project. If it's the main Webflow project, we just have to redirect the user to the domain and then the corresponding path. If it's not any kind of Webflow project at all, it's not being connected, the only thing that we'll do is just return whatever the user was trying to fetch. Okay, we'll just leave that request go through and get the original response from it. And going back, if the subdomain is a reverse proxy, which means that maybe it's one of those nested projects that we want to have, in that case, we will have to redirect the user to the corresponding subdomain. And this is what I told you when I was typing attributes.finsweet.com, and then I was being redirected to finsweet.com/attributes. So essentially, we're redirecting the users to make sure that always we're serving the content from the domain. And then if we go back again here, now we have the option of, okay, let me just put it as Finsweet for consistency. Okay, the hostname is actually finsweet.com, which means that now I have to check the path under it. So well, first of all, I don't know if you know about this, but trailing slashes are something that could happen. A trailing slash is essentially when you have a URL like http://finsweet.com/about. But maybe this URL could also be typed with a trailing slash. So this URL could also be /about/ like this. So this slash in the front, this in here, it's called a trailing slash. So we want to make sure that for consistency, all the URLs always either they have a slash or they don't have a slash. Because otherwise, for example, Google, when crawling your website, could detect that you have a same page about in two different versions, with trailing slash and without trailing slash. And this could be considered, potentially could be considered duplicate content. So we don't want that. We always want to be consistent. In this case, what we'll do is, if there is a trailing slash, we'll remove it. Okay, we'll leave it like that, but only in subpaths, because under the domain, we'll always leave the trailing slash, because the main domain is the only thing that it's actually the same with a trailing slash and without a trailing slash. Both the crawling bots, the browsers, everything, they consider a domain with trailing slash to be the same one without trailing slash, just for your info. So we have this path, and we will handle the trailing slash. So if it has trailing slash, we will redirect the user without the trailing slash. Okay, but if it does not have a trailing slash, then we'll see if the path matches a proxied subdomain. Remember, if we go back here, remember that the proxied subdomain, it has to match the path in here. So the subdomain has to match the path. But maybe, you're writing about in here. And in this case, you don't want to be going to about.webcherries.com. You actually want to go to the main domain, the main project, to the about page of that project. So we have to first check if the path matches a proxy subdomain. If it matches a proxy subdomain, means that we are in here, meaning that there is actually a sub-project that has been matched, and we have to return the content from that sub-project. So if that's the case, then we'll just, first of all, we'll fetch the contents, the corresponding contents from it. We will check if the response is redirected, because in Webflow, you probably know it, in Webflow, you can add 301 redirects. In the project settings, you could potentially take a route and add a redirect to another route. So when we fetch those contents, we first need to make sure that, okay, is this response actually redirecting me? Because if it's redirecting, then we also need to do that redirect. But if it's not redirecting, the only thing that we'll do is just return the fetch content. And the last thing, and now I'm finishing, I'm sorry, because you can see that it's pretty expensive. If the path does not match a reverse proxy subdomain, means that we are dealing with the main project. Let me just go back here. If it doesn't match anything of this, which are the subpaths, this means that we are dealing with the main project. So then we'll do just the same. We'll fetch the content from the main project, and then we'll check if the response is an actual redirect and forward it to the user. And that's it. Cool. Okay, this is the full picture. You can see that it seems simple at first, but once you try to go and in the details of, okay, how we deal with subdomains, okay, how we deal with trailing slashes, okay, how do we deal with a response, a content that is actually being redirected with a 301 from Webflow, you can see that it gets a little bit more complex, but we'll handle it. Today, I'm going to just start writing the actual logic for this reverse proxy, okay? The first thing that I want to do, I'll just get rid of everything, and I'll do a very basic setup. And remember that this is a Cloudflare worker, and to make things simpler, I'm going to install a framework that is called Hono.js. This is just a routing framework, and you could totally do it without it. But I think it's a good investment to have it in case that in the future you want to add extra routes, you want to deal with environment variables. You'll see that in a second. So you can see that a very basic setup is just this. Okay, so I'll start the Hono package, install it. Sorry. And let's just copy this. 1 second. Cool. So essentially, this is pnpm install Hono. Sorry. Can I type correctly? Okay, now it's being installed. Yeah. Cool. So essentially, you can understand it as a Express or Fastify, any kind of backend system frameworks. In this case, Hono.js is very simple, and we just care for now. For now, we just care about everything that's going through the worker, because remember that there is just one point of entry, which is this. The whatever subdomain and whatever path. We just have this main entry. And then the reverse proxy has to decide for the rest. So what we'll do is, okay, let's just put an asterisk. Let me zoom in a little bit more. And with this asterisk, we'll run the entire logic, okay? So in here, we just know that we have to return something to the user, okay? That's the main thing. For now, let's just return like this, so it doesn't yell at us. But in here, we have to run different checks to understand exactly what we're doing, right? So the first thing that we'll do is remember, let's just follow the schema. The first thing that we will do is check if the host name would be this or this, subdomain or no subdomain. We'll have to check it if it's the project itself, right? In this case, let's remember that our domain, let's just put it in here, is webcherries.com. Come on. This is the domain. And then we have a bunch of subdomains. So the main subdomain, let's call it Webflow subdomain, which would be the main subdomain. It's going to be WF. So remember that we have the main project under WF and all the other subdomains under whatever name we decide to put. So in this case, the Webflow subdomain will be WF, and the other subdomains are going to be an array of sub1 and sub2. Okay, and now let's go back to the here. Okay, so first, is the host name Finsweet.com? We'll see if it's not, which is the simplest thing. Okay, so in this case, well, not Finsweet.com, sorry, webcherries.com. So what we'll do is, first of all, we'll get the origin. The origin is going to be, let me just create a URL. So new URL, and in here we can access the request, and the request has the URL as a string, and we're going to convert this to an actual URL. So essentially now from here, from this URL, we can access the origin, the host name, the path name, and the search params. And let me just explain what's everything. So let's imagine that we have a URL like https:/webcherries.com/sub1/contact, and then we also have some query params like progress, I don't know, dev equals to true, whatever. This could be any kind of thing. It's a query param. So essentially the origin in here, it's this. If it was a subdomain, so let's imagine that this was like this, the origin is still this, okay? Oh no, sorry, the origin is all of this, sorry, with the protocol, it's the HTTPS protocol. The host name, it's just this. So that the host name is actually the domain or the subdomain. So the entire subdomain. So the entire thing. Okay. The path name, it's whatever goes after the host name. So it would be this, the path, sub1 contact. And the search, it's the query params in here. So it's dev equals to true in this case, which would be everything that follows after the question mark. So we'll use everything in here to write our own logic. So let's just check. First of all, let's remember again, is the host name Finsweet.com or webcherries.com in our case, okay? So we have to check if the host name, it's not equal to our domain. Remember that we're checking if it's webcherries.com. If it's not equal, means that we have to run the logic for this branch. It's not the host name, so we have to first check if the subdomain is reverse proxy. So let's just do it. And let's just write out every single step. Is main domain. Like this. So first of all, we have to see, okay, is then the subdomain reverse proxy? So what we'll do is, okay, let's see if it matches. And we'll see that, and we'll try to match a subdomain. So we'll say subdomains. We want to find one of these subdomains, sub1 or sub2, where the host name starts with it. So host name starts with the subdomain. like this. And essentially we're saying, okay, go ahead and check this. Is our host name, this host name, starting with sub1? No. Is our host name starting with sub2? Maybe no, maybe yes, I don't know, whatever, it depends on the case. So if it matches, means that the user is visiting something like sub1.webcherries.com/ whatever, or it could be even without the slash. It could be from here to here, and even it could have query params. Okay. So let's handle this case. Let's handle when actually we meet a subdomain. We match one of these subdomains. Let's just call this, yeah, just match. I think it matches fine. So if there's a match in here, what we will have to do is we need to redirect the user to the corresponding site. So let's remember that if it's in a subdomain, we have to tell, okay, please send the user to the corresponding path in here. Okay, if this subdomain has further things, like for example /contact, then we have to not only send the user to the path in here, we have to keep everything that goes after. So we have to keep also the contact, and if there was, let's say a query param like dev equals to true, we also have to send the user with the query param. Okay, so this is what we're actually, what we're handling right now in here. Let's just put it in here to make sure we're following everyone. So we have to create this URL. Okay, someone will say redirect URL, and in this case we have to first join the main origin. So the main origin would be, let me just put it like this. 1 second. So the main origin would be https://webcherries.com. Okay. Or I can be a little bit smarter, and instead of writing it like this, I can just use a variable. So essentially we're not rewriting everything. We're just, yeah, keeping the origin connected to the main domain. So we have to join the main origin. We also have to join the, we want to join this with the actual match. Okay, so this would be the subdomain. This is the match. And also we want to keep the path name, which would be everything that goes in here, path name. And also we want to keep the search. Okay, so first of all, let me just join this. Let's join this. I think it's main origin with slashes, like this. Maybe we'll break it, because we will have the origin that doesn't have a slash, and the match. Let's just write it. Let's just write it ourselves. Let's just put the main origin slash the match slash, or with the path name, because the problem is that the path name, this path name, it's going to start with a slash. So here there will be a slash already, and we don't want to have duplicate slashes. And then also we want to have the search. So we'll also add the search in here. Cool. And this should be like this. So we are concatenating everything. And for what I'm seeing, the only thing that it's missing is this slash. So let's try to make it even better. We'll just put a slash in here. Stay with me. And now I'll just do again what I was trying to do before, that it's just using an array with join. So because it's just cleaner, the path name and the search. And I'll just join everything in here. Okay, this is the redirect URL. So essentially, we have created this URL in here. So we have these, we have constructed this URL, and we want to redirect the user to that URL. So we'll just say, we'll just return a redirect method. This method it's from Hono.js. So this is just a helper that Hono provides. And we redirect the user to this redirect URL with a 301 protocol, the 301 status, sorry. And I think I made a mistake before, because when I was talking about the sitemaps, I think I don't have it anymore. I said that the redirects are 302. I was wrong. I'm sorry. It's 301. So that it's a permanent redirect. So essentially saying, hey, this is no longer the URL. The actual URL, it's the one where I'm sending you to. Okay. So now we've handled this path where it's not webcharts.com. The subdomain is reverse proxied. It is, because we found the match. So we are just redirecting the user to the corresponding path under webcharts.com. And this is what we did in here, like this. But now we have to keep handling more cases. So the next case is the subdomain is not reverse proxied. It could be the case, you know. For example, let's imagine that we are visiting something like cdn/webcharts.com/my thing, whatever. This URL, it's not reverse proxied at all, right? So in this case, means that we don't want to handle something that it's not being reverse proxied. So essentially, we're going to just actually, I forgot something. Let's put another case before, because we have two cases here. We have the case of the subdomain is the main Webflow project, yes or no. So let's first handle if the subdomain is the main Webflow project. It's going to be simpler, and we'll just check that the host name starts with the Webflow subdomain. So essentially, we're just saying that the user it's visiting wf.webcharts.com/whatever, which means that we have to send the user to webcharts.com, well, HTTPS, like this. Let's keep in mind that always there's the protocol in front of it. So we have to send the user to webcharts.com/contact. We don't want users be visiting the main subdomain in here. So we'll just do the same. We'll just create again the redirect URL. Let's redirect URL, and we'll just do main origin and the path name and the search, like that. And we'll join this like this. So redirect, and we'll do the same. We'll just redirect the user to this page. So let's just recap. If the user is visiting the main project, wf.webcharts.com/contact, we want to send him to the main domain, which is webcharts.com/contact. That's it. Cool. And then the last thing that was the not reverse proxy, not Webflow project, nothing. It's completely different. It's another subdomain. In this case, the only thing that we want to do is just return whatever the user was requesting. Okay, we don't want return. We'll just fetch the contents from the original request. We'll just fetch that request and return it to user, which is what's happening here. That's it. Okay, we don't want to interfere with anything that it's not one of these subdomains. And this is the perfect example, cdn.webcharts.com. Thank you for staying with us. We'll finish this complete setup on the third part. On the third part, we'll just make sure that we finish the bit of code that we have here and with all the different scenarios that we need to handle. And also we'll explain about the proper settings in the Webflow projects to make sure that everything is completely set up and you can work with it in a real live project. Okay, so stay tuned for that. We'll see you in the third part. And leave your comments, likes, whatever you have to you would like to mention with us in the YouTube video when you see this. Thank you. Bye.